Hello, Torben.
Hello, how are you?
Fine. Welcome to the podcast on everyday metallurgy.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I was very glad when I got the invite.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it was very special. I read about you in our local paper on a new prize you got.
Oh wow,
Um,
what paper was that? Now I'm
uh,
curious.
not that local. It's Danish local.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, And I said, wow, this is amazing. So I would like to learn more from that guy. So that was why I invited you, because I'm sure that some of the listeners, they absolutely also would like to learn more about this field. Because today we're going to talk about microbial corrosion, where you are one of the experts in the world, I would say. Um, but first, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell a little about your background. Where do you come from, and how did you find your seat in the world of corrosion?
Yeah, I can sure do that. While I keep introducing myself, I'll try and share my slides because I have a few pictures that I also wanted to share. So
Okay.
we'll see if it comes up on your screen. Do you see this?
It's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try and run it in this mode. Yeah, and I think I don't know your previous people that you interviewed, but I would guess that I'm the first biologist. Is that correct?
Yes, you are.
And I also think I'm the first biologist that ever got that prize. So I really got tumbled in as a young PhD student or graduate. Actually, 20 years ago in early 25. Right into the oil and gas industry and had to deal with corrosion. And I had absolutely no idea. So that's me sitting there looking in the petri dish, and my
Yeah.
professor is taking notes. I'm now out of the cave, and I have sort of self educated myself into the wonders of microbiologically influenced corrosion. It's not a very easy thing to say, so we'll just call it MIC.
Yes.
From now on, we just call it
Yeah.
MIC. Some people also call it biocorrosion or microbial corrosion, but it's kind of the same. I can tell a bit about myself. See if I can get to move this ahead. So as I mentioned, I'm a microbiologist, and microbiology is this part where you need a microscope to actually see the creatures that you work with. So that's kind of the definition of a microbiologist, and it's very related to chemistry. In fact, the microbes are just tiny creatures that catalyze reactions, chemical reactions.
Yeah.
If
So
you see
small
it from
chemical factories.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if you look at it with chemistry eyes, it's just catalyzed chemistry on a metal surface, for instance. I have a PhD from Aarhus University. Some people can link with me on LinkedIn. I have a master's degree in biology. And then I worked 10 years in the industry. And that was after my PhD. And that was on something completely different. Like that was marine algae in the Botany Bay in Sydney. I was diving a lot, having a great time, looking at bacteria keeping algae and marine creatures free of fouling, and how could we use that for engineering purposes to kind of learn the secrets of the marine creatures. But then I started working with the Danish oil and gas sector. I've been out on the platforms, and I just had a really, really good time and extremely steep learning curve. And it's not a qualification being on a platform telling them that you have a PhD. You kind of keep that a little bit low. because that's like really everyday problems that you need to solve.
Then they will tell you, okay, then I need to show you how to clean your dishes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I kept that a little bit low, but I really learned a lot. And I had a great mentor, Jan Larsen. He was a production chemist with Maersk Oil. And I worked with him. He died 10 years ago, but I worked with him for 10 years, and he was extremely curious. And I think that's really what you need to be. You need to be curious, and that's also why I think it's nice that you gave me this opportunity, because I learned so much about like engineering, about production chemistry, about reservoir simulations, all kind of stuff I never heard about. And it took me kind of inside the machine room. And I had my microbiology toolbox, and we could help each other. So yeah, from Aarhus University, I did PhD jointly with Aarhus University and UNSW in Sydney. Then I went to DTI in Aarhus, Center for Chemie og Vandteknik, Chemistry and Water Technology, for 9 years. And then I was with DNV in Bergen in Norway. I was a manager, project manager with them in their corrosion laboratories. Really, really nice time as well. I learned so much about massive engineering projects and how my skills could fit in. I was the first microbiologist employed in DNV, and now they have 5, and I still work a lot with them.
Okay.
So, So then I moved to VIA University College, which actually we have our research center in Horsens. We are 75 researchers working in water technology, all kind of disciplines. Very much something with the climate change, water supply, and so on. And we have this engineering line called Climate and Supply Engineers, and it's very popular. Young people, they want to save the climate, and we want to give them the tools to do so. So I shifted a lot of my work towards mentoring and teaching. And then on top of that, I also made my own company just to have a little bit of side business with people that wants to have advice or help with like really like concrete matter of their problems with microbiology, corrosion, so on. Yeah, and that kind of leads me to the prize. But yeah, that was a bit of the background.
Yes.
Of
that was career. The one I mentioned.
yeah, that was the one you mentioned in the beginning. That got you. That got your mind triggered.
Yes. So can you disclose why you got that prize?
Yeah,
it's difficult really, to.
Yeah, but it's. Somebody yesterday asked me. I had some people I joined some sports with, and one guy. So he's in a completely different business area. He's in entertainment, and he does like art and entertainment. And he said like, "Oh, you got this prize? I saw that. What's up next? What prize are you going for next?"
Yeah,
I said like, you don't go for a prize in this field. I think it's something that your colleagues, they recognize that you have done something for 20 years, and then they want to give you some credit and some acknowledgement. And I think it's just as simple as that you've done something and people think it's good, but you cannot plan for this. Basically, it's but I got another. It was called the Technical Achievement Award 4 years ago. So this was given by AMP, Association of Materials Performance and Protection, and they changed name a few years ago. Before that, it was NACE, and NACE is maybe something that people in the corrosion space they know. They do a lot of standards and so on. So I got this Technical Achievement Award, and that was for education and so on. But this fellow award, I think that's kind of like the crown of awards you can get in this society. So it's really an acknowledgement. I was just very proud, and also humble getting this prize. Together, we were 5 that awardees that got the prize, and I think they had like 100 applicants sending in that they were nominated. But I got it alongside with a gentleman from U.S. Navy, Jason Lee, and he's also really well known and well respected in the area of microbial corrosion. Of course, a lot of what he does is secret. It's within the Navy of U.S. military, but we work together, me and him, on some standards. We have 5 standards that we look over. So it was very, very nice to be at the party and get the prize together with him. So
yeah. I also became a little proud when I saw it.
Okay, I'm glad.
But Torben, I think we should jump to the more technical part now.
Yeah, let's do that.
And the MIC, it's corrosion that is based on microbial activity. But could we start for newcomers within the corrosion world? What is happening in corrosion? What kind of corrosion do you typically handle?
As I started out saying, MIC is kind of my area, but people have often in their mind that you have CO2 corrosion. Okay, it's caused by CO2. This is the cause. Then we have H2S corrosion. All right, it's caused by production of H2S, and that's the cause. And then you have like stress corrosion cracking. You have erosion. You have crevice corrosion. You have all kind of like corrosion phenomena in the environment, but you need an electrolyte to drive the electrons, and you need a material, like you need a surface that needs to deteriorate. But I really see microbiology is just part of the environment, and there's not. Then people categorize corrosion. They say, all right, there's also this thing is called MIC. That's one thing, but actually in that box, it's a million things. Because you just have these small machines, the microbes, and they can catalyze all kind of reactions together, alone, with others, and so on. You have microbes that can live off arsenic. You have microbes that can live off stone, like bare stone. They can get energy from that, and it's just a wonder of electrochemical processes that's going on. This was just an article that people can read themselves. It's in Danish, but people can machine translate it. But it's Teknologisk Videndeling. They read an article, or they provided an article. But I have some examples because you asked me to come up with some everyday examples earlier in the week. So should we go for that now, and then I can maybe explain a little bit what's going on?
That would be nice, because my background is I've been working with stainless steel material and developing stainless steel alloys for many years.
Okay.
So the corrosion I typically see or work with is crevice or pitting. So I'm pretty familiar with that. The protection layer. What can harm? What can harm the passive layer? And I could see, if we put a layer of microbes, they could remove the oxygen and make repassivation impossible. But maybe they could also eat the oxygen.
Or they could make a cell where you actually have so the biofilm will actually increase the chloride concentration within the pit, and then it's a combination of like it's a salty chloride environment that is actually tolerable for the metal surface when the biofilm is not there, but when the biofilm starts making that localized environment, then you suddenly get a problem. So there's a lot of knowledge here, and that's one of my pets. That me as a biologist, I don't know about Poiret diagrams. I don't know about passive layer. I've never heard about it in my education. I never learned about it. But I'm sure that there are metallurgists and they're really great corrosion engineers. They know all about that. So I learn from them, and I pick all the knowledge. But they also need to know about what a disulfuribrio, acioglobus, or like all these funny names, what they can do to the system. So, and again, we need to be open to have this discussion. And everybody needs to be humble in that discussion, that nobody has it figured out, all of it. Because if we have it figured out, there will be no problems with MIC.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors, Mr. Rick Eckert, he's a senior researcher in the United States. He was with DNV for a long time. He said in a presentation, we can land probes on the moon and Mars, and we can put a man on the moon with all our technological capabilities. And we can send mirrors and space telescopes out to the far end of the solar system. But we cannot get our heads around to solve this problem.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty mind-blowing. And actually, we talk a lot about how much money we should spend on the military. There's this 2% thing.
Yeah.
But actually, do you know the number of how much corrosion deteriorates our society in terms of GDP, bruttonationalprodukt? Do you have an idea? I
think it is around 5%.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit high. I read a paper, or there was a study by NACE a few years back that it was 3.4. So, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
And if we actually use already existing knowledge that we have, we could actually reduce that by 30%. Just by using what we already have. I think that's mind-blowing, again. And of that percentage of 3.4, let's just say that's a like gigantic number. 20 to 40% is actually MIC. So people need to know about this. Should we go through some examples? This is a nice day, by the way, at the Halfdan field.
It looks nice.
It's the gold at the end of the rainbow. That's the oil.
Yeah, the black gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I have 4 examples. So we have our sewer systems. They're made of concrete, and there's a lot of deterioration due to sulfuric acid in our concrete sewer systems worldwide. And that's actually an interesting combination of hydrogen sulfide being produced by one type of microorganisms that called sulfuric reducers, and they need to live in an anaerobic environment where there's no oxygen. So they live in a biofilm underneath the water. But then we also have another type of microorganisms called the sulfide oxidizing bacteria, and they live up here where we have oxygen. So they're like us. We like oxygen. If we don't get oxygen, we cannot breathe. They need oxygen to breathe, to actually process the electrons in the metabolism. And then they actually take the energy from the hydrogen sulfide that is produced by the sulfuric reducing bacteria down here. So it's like a symbiosis. And they can only produce sulfuric acid, which is very deteriorating for the concrete. It just becomes like powder. But they can only produce that if they get the hydrogen sulfide and the oxygen. So it's this special environment where this happens. And it's still like a very a big problem. You see here is gravity based. So you have the oxygen rich zone up here, and then you have like the water here. In this part, it's not a problem because here it's in the mains that's pumped up. You only have the anaerobic, so there it's not a problem. That was one example. Then we have drinking water systems, and this is a picture from Aarhus, Sonneskade, where I went to get some pipe. So I do a lot of research on drinking water. And this is what it looks like. Also in old parts of where you live, like this is from 1874.
Okay.
So 150 years old, cast iron pipe. And these are tubercles. And they're filled with all kind of bacteria. which I would call healthy bacteria, like for us. Like we don't get sick or anything. But when you get some pressure release in such a system, you of course get this red iron oxide transported to your tap. So there's still some cast iron out there. There's also asbestos cement and PVC from the 70s and so on. Even some places have wood pipes. We want to get rid of all that, and then we install a high density polyethylene pipe. So this is part of my research, looking at like biofilm in polyethylene pipe systems.
Yeah. What was the original diameter of that tube?
I would say maybe 15 or something, or 12. Yeah, and now it's like, I don't know, 5 or 6. Yeah, so it reduces definitely the water flow.
A lot,
then we go to oil and gas, and it's always nice to do research for oil and gas because they have a lot of funding. But I think now we're going into a green transition, and we need to learn from what we actually gained from our oil and gas research, and then we're trying to transfer that into renewable sector, because it looks like we're just repeating our mistakes when we put up monopiles for the wind systems and so on. So we kind of forget to learn what we actually found out over the past 50 years. So there's a lot of discussion about paint work and cathodic protection on monopiles, and maybe some of the early designs were not that good, and we see the suffering of that now. But that's an ongoing discussion. When people say to me up front, we don't believe in MIG, it's not going to happen in our system, I become very curious. All right, let's see in 10 years, let's see. Because we all learn in Corona time the exponential curve, when something just starts to go really fast. And the interesting thing with the exponential curve is that our human brain cannot understand it. Like it's impossible to understand logarithmic growth because it's not logical for us. We are built like our brain is like made from the Stone Age man. Like if it's raining today, it must be raining tomorrow, and we kind of predict in a linear fashion. So like an exponential curve, it goes, everything's fine, but then suddenly it starts to creep up. But that creeping up, you cannot see it because it's so slow, and then suddenly it just whang, it just goes to the top.
It explodes,
Within, say, half a year, you can lose control of your integrity of a whole oil platform due to MIG. Half a year, you can lose control. And that was maybe the half a year where the corrosion engineer, he took a sabbatical, or he was fired and somebody else had to take over his job and find out what was going on. So that's the problem, that people don't do maintenance, they don't do inspection, and they just leave things going for too long. And they always saving money of not looking after it, but then they lose control with that 6 months. And I've seen that so many times in the North Sea and elsewhere. This is my favorite panel about the dots here, the red dots. It's the oil and gas infrastructure, and whenever you see a red dot, it's the way to hell for the oil and gas industry. The helicopter fuel is being consumed by bacteria. The ballast tank are being deteriorated by bacteria. You have bacteria in the reservoir that produce H2S. You cannot sell your oil. All kind of problems. It's all over. And then there are some positive ones as well. But that's another story. That's how you
not a lot.
But that's how you can benefit from microbes. This is from severe isolated corrosion in a carbon steel from crude oil topside piping. And they thought it was CO2 corrosion. But they had some coupons, and they could not explain why the coupons were deteriorating at such a high corrosion rate. So really something didn't match up in their models. You know, engineers, they love to calculate corrosion rates. But here something does not add up. They were not using any biocides because they thought it was CO2. Then we came in and we scraped out some stuff from the pits, like corrosion products, and we analyzed it with DNA. methods, just as you would do with forensics when you have a murder and a crime scene. You use a little swab, and then you analyze it, and then you tell them, these are the bacteria that are sitting in your pit, eating away your metal. And they go, oh shit, that was sulfate-reducing bacteria and something called methanogenic archaea. And they are highly, highly corrosive, and we find them all over in the oil and gas industry. But you cannot measure them by the culture techniques that they normally use. So they have a blind spot.
They don't grow on an agar.
No, not very well. So they were having a blind spot. They thought that they had no bacteria. But when we came with the DNA methods, we said, like, you have plenty, and it's the bad guys.
Yeah.
So now they got
this. This DNA method, is that newly introduced?
No. I worked on that for 20 years, Peter. So, but it's new to a lot of engineers. But we now, January this year, got it introduced into a NACE AMP standard. It's in some ASTM standards and so on. But yeah, there's a lot of conservatism in the industry for going for new stuff. This is a Danish example. I think I only have a few slides left on the technology.
Yeah.
But this is the Danish example. This is the Siri platform. And for the engineers, we don't have a pipeline from this complex here to shore. So the oil, when it's produced, it actually is stored down at the bottom here. And so it's called like an oil storage, gravity-based storage tank. So it fills up with oil, and the water is pressed out on the bottom. And then sometimes the tanker comes and they offload the oil to the tanker. So that's how we get the oil to shore to the refinery. And then we have these satellites here. They're unmanned, Cecilia and Nini, and they pressure support. So that's the blue line here. It's a pipeline of 32 kilometers. The pressure support the reservoir because they need to pump seawater down to keep the pressure up for oil to be pressurized out of the pores and the reservoir. Then we also, when the water comes up again, together with the oil, it's an emulsion of water, oil, and gas, a little bit like soft ice or mayonnaise. We need to separate water, oil, and gas. And the water, we sometimes produce more water than oil. And we need to process that water. Like this is like 100,000 of barrels of water. And it needs to be rinsed and processed and rinsed. And then you can throw it in the water, like in the ocean, if it's clean.
Yeah.
So what about pumping it down again, like together with the seawater? Brilliant idea. It's called produced water reinjection. But then they started at this platform to mix cold seawater and hot, oily water from the reservoir. And if I heard that, I have big alarm clocks ringing, because you have water from the sea. It contains sulfate, massive amounts. And that's the fuel for sulfate-reducing bacteria. That's what they need to breathe.
Yeah.
And then you bring up some oily water with a lot of volatile fatty acids and a lot of organic substances that's food. So you mix the breathing material, the sulfate, with the energy. So you give them hamburgers and a lot of oxygen, and then it just go crazy. So I could have told the company here that was Dong Energy at the time, this is not a very good idea. So actually, this is they had a leak, a big rupture 2 kilometers into this pipe in 2007. And this crack here is at the 6 o'clock position, and it's around 15 centimeters long. And you see how it just widened up. Yeah. You have these pits here. So they had a feast. They had everything they needed to produce this.
Yeah. So this crack was caused because they make pits.
Yep. And then pits on top of pits and pits on top of pits, and then suddenly they just deteriorate.
And then the pressure in the tube makes the rest.
Yeah, like they couldn't. The way they found out was that they lost pressure support on the system, and they just kept putting pressure on. And when they sent divers down there, so this is the 6 o'clock position. It points towards the sea bottom.
Yeah.
Like there was a ditch of 2 meters deep, with water being pumped out to spray.
Yeah.
So this is my last example. This is from Norway. I did a PhD. I was supervising a master student from NTNU, and she looked at sprinkler system in a hospital, and it was very, very new, only I think 8 years old. And they got water from the city. They call it city water, like just normal water. And it stands with water. And they got some really, really nasty biofilms in there. This is where she took out the pipe. And yeah, you see, if you get a fire and you get all these, all this shit in your pipe, these sprinklers, they will clog immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is actually a quiz for the viewers, and maybe they can stop, what do you call that, pause, and then they can think about this. This is what I ask my students, and then I'm done with the slides. I had 4 examples here, 4 industries, oil and gas and drinking water and so on, sewer and sprinkler systems. And what do they actually have in common, and what will stimulate MIC? Because the answer comes, and that's if you can take one of those things that I mentioned in a minute out of the equation, then you are very good in eliminating MIC.
Yeah.
So the viewers can just now they can turn on again. You need an electrolyte, right? You need something to transport. You need a surface. You need nutrients. You need the hamburgers for the bacteria. And then you need the electron acceptor, and that's actually the breathing material. So for us as humans, it's oxygen.
Yeah.
But bacteria, they can use breathing material of any kind, like CO2, that's the breathing material, manganese, iron, so stone. So it's crazy how versatile they are. Then bacteria can live from -2 degrees C up till 120 degrees C. So that's the world record under pressure. And then you also need to have like some optimized flow. And people sometimes tell me, oh yeah, over 3 meters per second, we cannot have any bacteria or any biofilm. It will be ripped off. And I said, yeah, that's not true. It just becomes dense. It just becomes very, very dense, and they just stick even harder.
Okay.
So there's a lot of myths in this world, a lot of like rule of thumb that were made like 50 years ago, and people they keep on going with them. But the good thing is that we now have the DNA methods that we can utilize.
Yeah.
This is the 2 last slide. This is the picture I show to engineers when I talk about bacterial colonization of surfaces and how it just goes from single cells in the liquid until a biofilm. And this theory is only 25 years old, actually. So in biology, so that's maybe why we still think of bacteria as something that's in the liquid. That's 1%. 99% is actually on the surface. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And then we call it different things. Different technical disciplines. I don't know, like some call it scale, corrosion products, debris, slime. It's just the stuff that sits on the surface. And if you analyze it with whatever technique, you will get an answer, right? This is from an oil pipe. And there you have, so this is mild steel. The diameter is like 19-inch. It's producing multiphase, so oil, water, and gas. And then we have the liquid in here, the metal down here, and then we have this stuff that sits on the top here. And in one oil company, they call it the black sticky stuff. Like that's not a scientific term, but when we analyze that, it's actually 90% organic, and there's a lot of cells in there. Like you can't hardly put any more cells in there. So it's bacteria and DNA, but it's also inorganic corrosion products.
Yeah, rust.
It's asphaltenes and some. But whoever analyzes comes up with their own answer to what this is. And here you can see really nice deterioration of the metal, and it's going, to affect the integrity at some point. And this can happen within months. And it's very hard to spot because it's localized.
Yeah.
So stop sharing now.
Yeah.
Stop
Torben, I have some thoughts, and please feel free to say absolutely no, or if it's interesting. But in some materials are known to be poison for growth, for bacterial growth. So, for instance, silver. If you add silver to your water, if you have a water tank, then you can keep it free from bacterial growth for a month. It's also known that if you put a copper nail into a tree, the tree will die because organic material doesn't like the copper. But then I also saw from your articles that copper tubes, they also are affected by Nick. So don't you have any inhibitors that you can add to the tubes, to the steel tubes, that can make it difficult for the bacteria to stick or to survive?
It's a great question, and where to start. It's always a matter of cost. Like when you design something from the beginning, like everybody wants to make it as cheap as possible, but also as good, so it will actually last for a long time. At least that's what I hope. But yeah, this whole thing of investing upfront in technologies that will make things last, that's not really good. There's not a really good link between the knowledge and MIC and then all the way back to the design stage. There's really not. Like when people design like platforms, pipelines, and so on, they think cheap, and just get it in the ground and then move on to the next project. And then it's somebody else's problem to deal with it. Like somebody has to operate it. It's like we made it, and it's
another account.
Exactly, and which is stupid. They even make like the hydro testing of big oil pipelines with, we need some water. Oh, there's a lake over there. Oh, just pump the lake water in and let it stand, and then they suck it out again. But they never get it clean. Like you have a lot of dirty, muddy lake water standing in your pipelines for ages until they start producing, and then it's already infected. That happened in Alaska, North Slope in 2006. They had so much pitting, and it happens all the time. So having a good rationale, having a good design scheme, like knowing what to do, like I talked about, like starting to commingle different types of waters, and it like suddenly you make an environment that's very favorable for the microorganisms. Make sure that you have already pre-installed places where you can pick your system. Like if you don't have a pick receiver and a pick launcher, like you have to retrofit that in when you start to get the problem, and then it's already too late. The Danish pipeline from the Gorm E field to Fredericia, it's 300 kilometers long. It's been operating since the 80s. The 80s. Yeah. It's being picked twice a week with biocide, and they just keep picking it. It's sparkling, like it's fantastic. But that's the nerve that's kind of like what brings the oil to the shore, right? From our oil fields for like decades. Yeah. So if people are just, there's two strategies. I know you probably bring your car in every second year for this biannual check. Like you need to have your car checked, otherwise you cannot bring it on the road. But you have two strategies, and I see that in industry. You have those people that actually care about the infrastructure, and they invest in good maintenance and housekeeping and monitoring and inspection and all that. It's not very sexy, but it works. And then there's the others, and I'm not mentioning any company names, but they do a lot of disasters to nature and environment, and they just go on with like their head under their arms, and then let's just run it until it breaks, and then we'll put a new one in. Like that's another strategy. Yeah. And I've seen that in the North Sea. We blew it up, Oh, doesn't matter. We just install a new platform. Like we have one already ordered in
Okay.
South Korea. It's coming in half a year. So just keep some tape around, and then yeah, and it's ongoing. So to your question about what the solution is, I think, as I said, 30% of our failures and so on, we can actually reduce by already existing technology, like what we already know.
Yeah.
And then we have the remaining 2/3, which is harder. And of course, there's still being new inventions in biocides and ways to eradicate bacteria. But very often I see that this MIC is taking as a separate thing in companies. Like they have engineers and they have people that know about like the classic corrosion mechanisms, and they can deal with that. But then when it comes to this black box of MIC, we don't want to deal with it, or we don't know how to deal with it. So they become very insecure. And that's kind of where my business is. Like that's where I come in and help them. And sometimes it's too late. Like I often say to my student, in the oil business, there's this hierarchy of who's in power, who's in the oil industry is the god, like who's actually at the top in terms of technical disciplines. It's the geologist.
Okay.
They can find oil.
They can find oil, yeah.
They have this magic stick where they go around. Oh, here's oil. These are the top guys. And you know who's the next in line? Engineers.
Economist.
Engineers, because they can get the oil out. Like they know the infrastructure. And then comes finance, because they need to sell it. But engineers and geologists, they're in the top. And then you move down, and then you get to the guy on the platform. He's cooking, like the chef. He's also very important. He makes good food for the people.
Yeah.
And then you come to the medic, and then you come to the cleaner on the platform. And you know who's on the bottom? That's the microbiologist.
Yes.
Because you call the microbiologist in when you have a hole that you cannot explain.
Yeah.
That's our job. And then we tell them it's microorganisms, and then they ask us what should we do about it. Yeah, you kind of fucked it up like 10 years ago, so you should have done this 10 years ago. But that's too late now. So good luck. So and that was back to my previous point about DNV now having 5 microbiologists. So they actually know how to serve the clients, and they know how to explain this to people. So I think more microbiologists out working with engineers, that would be great. What was your question again about how we get rid of it? It's a simple question, but like the answer is like it's so complicated.
But because I was trying to look into how could metallurgists do something? Could we add something to the steel? You showed several examples of mild steel, and if addition of copper to the steel could inhibit the growth of some nasty bacteria, then I would gladly add 4-5% copper to the alloy.
We have a billion types of microorganisms out there, and there will be somebody that will have a workaround what you're just telling me.
Yeah.
There is this there's this theorem or this law in biology. It says everything is everywhere, but the environment selects. So it's kind of like like you have bacteria on your skin, and some of them are actually harmful, but they don't do anything to you. They're just there. But when you get a cut in your skin and blood comes out, some of them jumps in there, and then they are in a really different environment, and they can spread in your body, and then suddenly you get ill. It's a little bit the same when you start changing the environment. Everything can be fine, but when you start changing it, suddenly some new guys come along, and then they just adapt. And that's what we learned under the corona as well. That was evolution. They said in the news half a year ago, it was like this and this and this. But now they tell us something else. It must be a lie. No, it's just evolving. It's changing. And that's what people cannot get in their mind, that biology is not a static thing. It's evolving. It's changing. And viruses, they change like on the hour or day basis. Bacteria change maybe on the hour, day and month basis, and we humans we don't change a lot, but we change a little. But Yeah, so I think, and also it's interesting to discuss this with engineers and economists, because they have a very linear way of thinking sometimes, and biologists and geologists, they have a very both stochastic and also evolutionary way of thinking. You have these black swans and they land and then everything disrupts. So yeah, I just think it's interesting how we learn. But back to your question on the materials, I have one slide here I wanted to show you, because that's one of my pets. Do you see this? I normally call it like multiple line of evidence. And if you just move away the green for a little while, we are very good, like as a community of researchers and professionals, to look at all these things over here, the chemical environment. And we're also very good at looking at the physical environment. That's what engineers and professionals are trained for. And also the materials and the corrosion deposits. So these three are really well covered. But then we had a guy from Canada. He was a master student of mine, and he was doing a thesis on failure analysis of MIC. So he worked in Alberta province in Canada, and he got embedded into the Alberta energy regulators. So it's like the Petroleumstilsynet in Norway, Energistyrelsen in Denmark. It's kind of like the official body where these reports, they end when something fails.
Okay.
So that's confidential information. He signed an NDA and he was sitting in their computers looking into thousands of failures. He's the only guy in the world that did this.
Yeah.
And then he looked at, okay, I looked for MIC. He couldn't find the search term MIC because it was not listed in there as a mechanism. There was internal corrosion and external corrosion. That's it. In 2017, they started to put in the MIC word as a mechanism. Otherwise, he had to look for other things. But people were doing like sporadic things, like a little bit of planktonic water samples, and then they call it MIC and so on. But this box up here was really, really weak. And you need this last piece of the puzzle with potentially DNA methods to be able to answer like the whole question, if this was MIC or not. And there's not going to be a smoking gun on the table saying it's definitely MIC because of this number. There is no magic number. There's a lot of indications, like in a court, that, all right, everything points to that it's MIC. But I think that was really interesting that he did this research, and he also did a book chapter that I can source to people. That's really unique work and a lot of hours spent in the database.
I like this your description on that. We don't really understand this logarithmic because what you say, if you can measure just something, you don't need a certain amount, but if there is activity, then you only need the food and the and the oxygen. Then it can explode.
And it goes extremely fast. Like, would anybody go into an experiment, like any young person, would any young person go into an experiment of not brushing your teeth for 2 years? I don't think so, because we kind of know what happens. And it's the chemistry, the toothpaste, and it's the mechanical cleaning, the brush, that helps us morning and evening by removing the biofilm. And it's the same bacteria, it's sulfate-reducing bacteria that's producing the caries in our teeth. So when you meet somebody that has the bad breath, that's sulfate-reducing bacteria. It's H2S.
So you have MIC in your mouth.
Yes, that's true. So I always use the analogy of the toothbrush and the toothpaste. You need to have these two things in combination. If you start treating a system that's really, really dirty with biocide, it won't help you. You already lost control. You need to get rid of it, and then you need to do paint work or like cleaning or whatever, and then you need to start from scratch, basically. But yeah, people they need to do the investments up front. Also on knowledge, I think, investment in knowledge, in employing clever people that can help them and challenge them.
Over the last, I'd say maybe 20 years, alloy systems like duplex has been introduced into a lot of these industries.
Yeah.
Is that helping, or is it just too expensive?
I think it's helping, and it's too expensive.
Okay.
So like they use it in tubings, for instance, downhole, where you have like higher temperature and like it's sort of like really high value asset, right? Like you don't want to go and change your tubing now and then. Like it's like when it's there, you want to keep it there for 50 years, and it's just going to work.
It's install and forget.
Exactly. But elsewhere, where you can easily repair, like they don't use super duplex and these corrosion resistant alloys. It's just too expensive. But I hear a lot companies say like, we have engineered our way out of the MIG problem. I said good luck. Because yeah, you just, as again, different stainless steel types, you just need that passive layer to be deteriorated, and then you have something going, and then you suddenly have like a pinhole.
Yep.
In 2000, this is a funny story, and I can provide the link. So when this comes out as a YouTube, I can provide the link to this little video, 10-minute video, because me and Rick Eckert, we talked to all these engineers about. And they said about MIG, and they said, yeah. It's like these guys, they're sitting with a little drill machine, and they make this hole. No, it's not kind of what happens, but that's what you see. You see a little tiny hole, and then water comes out or something comes out. So we made this video, and Rick's son, he's an animator. So we made like a 10-minute animation, and we got a voiceover, like a professional voiceover from Hollywood, speaking over and telling about it. So we explain with an animation, how the biofilm forms and so on. So I'll provide that video. It's pretty funny. And the lady that did the voiceover from Hollywood. So we had a little budget. So we went down the list, like Morgan Freeman, too expensive. Bruce Willis, too expensive. Taylor Swift, way too expensive. So we went down the list, and then at the point where we could afford it, right, we take this person. And it turned out it's the lady. So if you hire or you buy a Jaguar, it's the road assistant voice. So you press the bottom when you need road assistant.
Yeah.
Welcome to Jaguar Road Assistance Service. How can I help you? That's her.
Okay.
So we thought that was pretty classy that our video was running with the voiceover from the Jaguar lady. So
in British English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. We had a lot of fun doing these videos and online teaching and stuff. So that's kind of what we spend a lot of our time doing.
Yeah.
So
that'd be very interesting if you can provide the link.
Absolutely.
I'll also add it to the postscript in the podcast.
Yeah. Cool.
Torben, we are about to end. Do you have some final words you'd like to spread? Do you have some advices if people want to learn more?
Yeah, I have that, Peter. So and first, before we hang up here, like I really enjoyed this conversation. I had great fun doing this. So thanks again for inviting me. And if there's just 2 people out there that picks up this and do better tomorrow, then my mission is completed. Because then those 2 people can tell about this podcast, and then suddenly it's 4, 8, 16, 32, and then we have an exponential growth. I like when I join podcast and so on, just to give people like something pay forward. And I already sent you this article, which is kind of fresh. It's less than a year old, and these are all like the best experts in the world on MIC currently. Judith from Hungary, Mr. Eckert that I already mentioned, Lisa Geek, she's a professor in Calgary, Dr. Kurt, she's a researcher in BAM in Germany, in Berlin, Mr. Lee, he's the guy from the US Navy, Dr. Silver, she's in Portugal, I don't know this guy, Annie, she's in Norway, and then Wade, he's in Australia. They all work with MIC, and it's open access. And this is really nerdy. And we actually wrote this mainly for the microbiologists, that MIC is not only about the microorganisms, because that's what a lot of microbiologists, they think. So we have a job educating engineers, but we also have a job educating biologists. So this is a really, really nice paper. And people can get that for free. I'll see if I can change the slides here. Then we have, if people want to spend 200, 300 euros for a whole week in Budapest in August, we have a summer course. And we have, I think we have like 15 seats left. We had last year in Prague. We also had last year a course in Turkey, Istanbul. It's really great fun. A lot of social stuff and a lot of laboratory and field trips and so on. So people can look up the site here, and there's still, as I said, 10, 15 seats for that. And then we have actually a free course. This is a European project. It's called COST. So we actually sponsored by COST to provide teaching material. So people can go in, they can sign up at this. It's called Learn Worlds. It's a teaching platform, and then they can take this course for free, and they get a certificate at the end saying like, I did this course, and there's like a what do you call that? A unique code on a certificate with their name. So that's really nice that we got that sponsorship from COST. And we're going to come out. So this course is on threat assessment. So how do we do an assessment of MIC and corrosion? And we're going to come out with 2 more free courses on mitigation, as you talked about, and also on monitoring and control. So these are something we have in the pipeline. And if people want to contact me, they can definitely just reach out. I'm around, so I will stop sharing. So that was kind of my outro, Peter. So
thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot today. And
that's great.
I'm sure I'll follow up on it.
And if you come to Horsens, come and get a coffee. We had a brand new campus right at the train station. It's only 2 years old, and you can see my labs, and we're gonna have a chat. I'll just ping me whenever you're around. So
I'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
All right, you'll have it.
See you.